Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project. We're a charity that helps people facing into their lives to write and record their own original songs. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, any ways you might support us, or if you or a loved one might be interested in writing a song with us, you can check out our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk, and you should find all the information you need there. But if not, feel free to contact us. This podcast features songwriters and we talk about one of their songs. They share with us a songwriting tip. And we also talk about songs meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Emily Barker, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so today I'm here with Emily Barker. Thanks for joining me, Emily.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to you. So if anyone who's seen these podcasts before, listened to them before, you'll know we do them in three sections. First, we're going to have one of my guest songs. We're going to have a chat about that. Then section 2, Emily's going to share with us a songwriting tip that might be useful for the songwriters. And then section 3, we're going to talk about songs meaningful to Emily in some way relating to bereavement. So I'll ask you to introduce your song for us, please, Emily.
Yeah, so this song is on my new record, which I just released a few weeks ago. The record's called A Dark Murmuration of Words, and this song is called The Woman Who Planted Trees.
I can tell my age by the height of trees, by the years they've stood growing over me. When I was a girl, you planted seeds and cast your love forever over me. When the land was dry, no food to eat, when the soil was sick and the river weak, you took a spade, bare hands, bare feet, and sowed your love down deep in the cool dark shade. Leaves sing your name, wild green tongues glisten in the glade. Your branches warm, my fingers weft, weave me through this gift you left. From a prison cell, you dreamt of trees, blood dried black upon your cheek. You didn't know, around the world, people listened, people learned. What a return, soil healed, hope restored with every yield. Trees grew high, bones grew strong, enough for everyone. In the cool dark shade, leaves sing your name, wild green tongues glisten in the glade. Your branches warm, my fingers weft, weave me through this gift you I can tell my age by the height of trees, by the years they've stood growing over me.
Okay, brilliant. So that was The Woman Who Planted Trees by Emily Barker. It's a stunning song, Emily, and it's like, I'm kind of unfortunate to say that I've only just come to your music recently. I kind of wish I'd been a fan for longer, but that came up on, I think it came up on my like Spotify Discover thing, you know, it just plays so nice. And I was just,
Good to know it works.
Yeah. And it was one of them songs where I was like, I used to have stuff like that on in the background when I'm working. I'm just working, and it just came on. I was like, what's this? You know, when a song just really hooks you like that. And I was just then immediately hooked, and I've been
amazing, cool.
a bit obsessed with your stuff since. So
well, thank you very much. It's not too late to come on board.
That's
Never
it,
too
yeah.
late.
So yeah, it's a really great song. So what can you tell us about writing it?
Well, that was the last song that I wrote for the album, and the album has a lot of themes about environment, and I wanted a positive story to contribute to this theme, because I feel like in 2019 there was so much awareness happening on a larger scale about the climate crisis, and it's really easy to feel very overwhelmed, and that there's not hope, and not know how to go about making any change happen. Like on a personal level, there's certain changes that you can make easily, but on a societal level it's hard to, you know, influence, and then on a government level it's really overwhelming. And so a lot of the album explores some of these responses, emotional responses to all of that information. And this song, I found an amazing story about a woman called Wangari Maathai. And in the 1970s in Kenya, she started a foundation called the Greenbelt Movement. And at the time, the government was selling off lots of land to their friends and clear felling the forest. And it was having this devastating impact on the food supplies for the communities, because the soil started eroding and all the topsoil would wash into the rivers, and nothing was able to grow. And Wangari was a biologist, and she had this deep understanding of ecology, and so she started to plant trees but also fight to protect the forest that was there. And she wanted to empower all the women in her community too, by teaching them forestry skills and beekeeping and all these new forestry skills basically. And so she started that in the 1970s, and over 1 million trees have been planted. And her daughter Wanjira, who I had the pleasure of speaking to on a radio interview actually, continued her legacy, and the community continued her legacy. And the trees are huge now that they grew at the beginning, and lots of this forest is protected, and all these new skills have been learned. And then Wangari, she's no longer alive, but in 2004 she won the Nobel Peace Prize for all the work that she'd done, and she was the first African woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize actually. So coming across her story was just really inspiring, and I wanted to write that because I felt like that's a great example of something that we can do. You know, a lot of us are able to either support financially a tree planting incentive or go and plant trees ourselves, and it just feels like a positive action that you can take during this time, which is really overwhelming, and that will absolutely do good. So that's why I wrote that song. Yeah,
it's a beautiful story and really inspiring, and I love, like, I mean, the imagery in the song I think is stunning, but I just love the title, The Woman Who Planted Trees. It's just like, it feels like, you know, it's a simple action in a way, but it's such a huge thing. It sounds like, a woman who planted trees, okay, but then it's like, the impact of that.
How it can affect, you know, directly her community, but then beyond the story can have an impact globally. And also with trees, they sequester carbon from the atmosphere. So no matter where you are in the world, it's a gift for the entire world, not only just your immediate community. So.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it in terms of like how nice it is to go for a walk in a forest somewhere and like just appreciating that natural beauty, but not thinking like someone's responsible for this. You know, so like I guess in her community, like, and I think some of the imagery in the, you know, walking through I love the line, "Believe, sing your name." I think that's
Well, there was this great documentary where Wangari's daughter, was walking through the forest and looking up, and I just imagined how when she was a girl, seeing her mother and the other women planting these trees that were small, and then now as an adult walking through this forest which is now overhead. and this idea of measuring time through the growth of a tree.
Was that something that was said in the documentary about the measuring time, or was that something that you came up with from seeing
It's
it?
something that I came up with, but it's something that's familiar to me too, because where I grew up in the southwest, in Bridgetown, southwest of Australia, my parents were involved with the Environment Society there, and we used to often plant trees, and there's a similar problem in various places in Australia where so much of the land was clear-felled for sheep and wheat farming, and that there's a problem with salinity levels in the soil. So when trees are taken out, then the salt level rises because the roots are no longer absorbing some of that salt, and then the salt comes up onto the top of the soil and forms like a crust, and then nothing can grow. So so I was part of tree planting groups when I was a kid to try to reduce salinity in the water table and keep soil fertile. So, and now when I go back home, I can see these trees which have grown so much, and I realise, oh God, I am old.
Yeah, no, it's something really nice image, and there's something really nice about it in terms of the community that the people growing up with the trees growing up around it.
Yeah.
Being rooted in that place in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you go looking for that documentary, or did you just stumble across it? Like, you said that you wanted a positive story for it. Was it just then you were going?
I was looking up tree planting, and I was just on YouTube, and I came across Wangari, and I think because she won the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's still continuing today. So I think I'd put in women tree planting or something like that, and came across her. So it was slightly, I was seeking out a good story.
Oh, so yeah, it's a good way of doing it, I guess. If you're interested in, like say, having these themes that you're interested in, then searching for the stories that have real life stories that can feed into your.
Absolutely, process. Which would be my songwriting tip if we're ready to move on to point number 2.
There's one question I wanted to ask you about the song before we move on. Is have you sent it to a daughter? Has she heard it?
Yes. So Wanjira, I got in touch with the Green Belt movement, and there's a press team in the US and in Kenya, and they sent it to Wanjira, and then I was doing an interview for Australian National Radio, and they wanted to interview me and Wanjira. So we managed to hook up this very complicated cross time zone interview with Wanjira in Kenya, me here in the UK, and the broadcast in Australia in Sydney, and we got to speak together, and she absolutely loves the song, and I was so blown away. And she said she's singing it with her daughters, and she just and she's incredible, like her mum. She sort of not only continued the legacy of the Greenbelt movement, but then started all these other environment charities in Kenya and in Africa. She is the I forget her exact title, but she's something like the Environment Minister for Africa or something like this now. So she's a very prominent person in the environmental sort of movement, and we've emailed since, and she's just so generous and beautiful and inspiring. And she said, well, you have a home in Kenya if you make it over this way. Like, wow. So it's sort of I never even had that hope that the song might reach her, but it has, and for me that is the ultimate sort of compliment, I suppose, that it meant something to her, and she felt like her mother's legacy was honoured. And so blown away by that.
Yeah, it's really lovely, and it's really nice. Like, it's nice how much their work then reached you across the world and impacted you, and then you've then taken that inspiration and used your skill set and your art form to create something which then goes back and
Wanjira was saying, like, well, the legacy lives on because you've written this song, and the legacy obviously lives on with her work that she does as well. And I've been talking to the Greenbelt movement, and they're going to use the song in whatever way they can with their promotions to, so it's sort of this, it can serve, I hope, what they're doing, and in some way. I was just like, please just have it, and I hope that it can serve serve the cause well.
That's brilliant. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it's a great song.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's move into section 2, shall we? This is where I ask for a songwriting tip from, I guess. So what would your tip be for us, Emily?
Well, I really love delving into research. So I really like telling a story, and I recently did. I was a tutor at the Glasgow Songwriting Festival, which this year was online. But I gave this task to people, which is quite a good one, I think, for getting into a song. But this specific one was to think of a river that has been important to you in some way, and to go into the topic and do loads of research about your river. Say the one that is it was in your childhood or family history or somewhere where you go regularly on holiday or something like that. And just research as much as you can about it, and spend when I write a song, I generally would spend 3 or 4 hours or more just taking notes and researching this story and trying to think of a perspective to write from. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your own perspective. It might be that you write from the perspective of a tree or a house that's been by this river for years, or I don't know, or rocks or something like that. Just have a think. You can experiment with writing from a different perspective. It's quite fun. And then what do we do? It doesn't have to be a river, but just for example, this is what I like to do. But just really go into the research of it, and then once you found your perspective, just looking at all your notes and just writing sort of stream of consciousness for maybe half an hour or something like that, or less even, but just reading your notes and then just putting them to the side and writing, and without almost thinking, but just trying to create imagery and things like that. And and then approaching the music, I often do them separately, but I have this one tip which I guess it's a tip, but where if people know a little bit about theory, then if, say, whatever key you're in, you can not use the root chord until the chorus is quite a fun experiment. So if you're in the key of C, then obviously you have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. But so instead of using C as the beginning chord, you could hold that until the chorus, and just try using all those other chords, not all of them, but whichever ones you want, and then saving the root chord to the chorus. Anyway, that was what the task that I set for the people on this course, and it was amazing seeing what people came up with, like their memories of their river. And then none of them had written a song where they hadn't used the root chord in the verses. So that was also led them in new ways. But you could apply it to whatever subject you like. But I would recommend just getting really specific and doing lots of research. I find that part really fun, actually, when I'm writing a song.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice. I think it's like a lot of people think of songwriting as like it's just this outburst of like creativity, and it's like just
happens in the moment.
Nothing then complete song. Whereas really, you can do it this way of spending a lot of time researching things. And I was liking the way you were describing the process. That feels like you kind of accumulate a lot of information about whatever the subject is, and then you're then processing it. So when you're doing your stream of consciousness, like you're taking it all in, then you're putting it all back out in a unstructured form, and then you structure it from there into how it would fit the song. Is that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I guess it's just the art is condensing all this information in a way that the narrative is clear, and you do that by only including the essential parts of the story. So it becomes this really important decision of what you include and what you leave out.
I always like the songs that have like lines that give you so much more, like is what's left out, but that you kind of is implied by what's included in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you sort of you have to think a little bit. It's like, does that mean Oh yeah, because that next line also backs up that idea, and yeah, so you have to be quite, yeah, very concise.
I remember hearing it described as the iceberg theory. You know, that like the all the knowledge the creator has about the song is the bottom of the iceberg, but the song itself is just the tip of it. So like
Yeah,
you know all this
that's
backstory
great.
and all this context, but then the song is just actually this snippet
tip.
of this information. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good metaphor for it, actually.
So is that a process you do a lot with your songs, of have that theme and then go through the research process? And
Yeah, I do that a lot, especially, well, if it's a story about somebody else, or yeah, then so for the woman who planted trees, that's a process that I did for writing that song.
I think it's another good example of that. You know, whatever topic you want to write about, there is so many interesting stories about it, and finding those stories is really fun. Yeah, whether it's about a river or about trees or about whatever you wanted to write about, if you look into something, you'll probably find very interesting stories about people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you quite visual when you write, in terms of like especially with that song, the imagery and it's really strong, and just the way you're talking about that stuff is like, do you see the settings of your songs quite clearly?
I put myself into the setting and just sort of walk around within that space and imagine the smell. I think that's a really important thing when describing, trying to describe something, thinking about all the senses. So what does it smell like? You know, what's the feel? Or, you know, if you reach out and touch something, what are the colors? What's the weather? Things like that. Just really imagining yourself in that place and the feelings that would arise in that place as well. So I feel like you have to like dive into the theme like in a really big way and submerge yourself and just feel it out.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good advice, and it's just an interesting process to do, I guess, isn't it? It's getting yourself into that place where you can do that. You know, I guess it's respecting the time, you're dedicating the time to do that, to get yourself into that place. It feels like you can't really do that well, like on the bus or something, you know, when there's other stuff going on.
You might have a few lines pop into your head or something like that, but then for me, I just need to be, you know, on my own and really go there.
Delve deep into it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. So let's move into section 3 now. So this is where I ask my guests to share whether the song's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And what I do here is I put the link in the description. So if you're watching or listening to this, you want to go listen to the song, you can pause us, click the link there, and come back and we'll have a bit of a chat about it. So what song did you choose for us, Emily?
So this is an old song of mine called Lord, I Want an Exit. And
yeah, great stuff. So if you're not familiar with it, you want to go have a listen to it, we're going to have a bit of a chat about it. So it's a very powerful song. And was this another one that was a story that you heard, or was it a personal experience? This is a
story, my grandfather actually. So I lost my grandmother in the early 2000s, my mum's mum, and quite suddenly, and she was in a car accident. And my grandfather, they'd been together for 52 years or something like that, and we were all obviously very upset, but he was really sort of shocked by it and didn't really know what to do with himself, because he was so dependent on her and she on him as well. And it was really heartbreaking seeing how traumatized he was from losing her, and he was so in pain that he didn't want to be around anymore, really. And he actually passed away 6 months after her. He had a little bit of lung cancer, but it sort of just escalated really quickly, I think, from his stress and trauma. And they were both Catholic. They'd been raised as Catholics and had sort of kept to their faith, and so he believed very much that she was in heaven and that he would get to see her again, and be with her. So he used and And it was really upsetting. But he would, we'd be there at his house, and he would say as much, just out loud, say that he wanted to go and be with her. And just before he passed away, he was at a hospice, and my mum was with him. She spent about a couple of months or something like that, sort of visiting him every day. And just before he died, he just sat bolt upright in bed and said, "My wife is my wife forever. My wife is my wife forever. My wife is my wife forever," 3 times in a row, and then said, "I'm coming to see you," and then passed away. So my mum was devastated that she'd lost both her parents in a very short amount of time, and this song was my way of sort of grieving my grandfather and understanding that he was ready to go. And so it's sort of from his point of view, and thinking of his wife, my grandmother.
Yeah, it's a very powerful song. It's and it's one of those where it's like, it's not a common perspective that you get in songs. What I really like is it's quite a complex situation that you described in it, and it's those things that it's very sad. It's got a sad element to it, but it's also got that beautiful element to it, that it's it's that enduring love and that solid belief that we're back together again. But I imagine it's a tricky balance to walk the line on those songs of making sure you get the balance right, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wrote this song. He didn't get to hear this song. I wrote it after he'd passed away. But yeah, it sort of brought my mum quite a lot of comfort in a way. Just sort of remembering that part of it, that he really did want to go, and that he really strongly believed that he would be with her again, and that is a source of comfort for people who believe in heaven and who are religious. So I can see how that would be absolutely, a thing that would bring some peace.
And it's nice that the song then lives on as a reminder of that he was ready to go at the time, and that the belief that then hopefully they're back together and happy, and
and it's quite it definitely is a consoling idea for for me as well, to think of them in that way.
It's so hard to imagine, that's been in a relationship with someone for that long. That's longer than both of us have been alive, isn't it? And, thinking how close I am to my partner, and I'm sure how close you are to your husband, and but that over 52 years, it's just so hard to imagine what that would be like, and then to that just be interrupted, especially suddenly. It's I think some things you can't understand until you've.
And that they'd been through so much. They were Dutch. They moved from the Netherlands after World War II out to Australia together with no family in Australia, and just built a life for themselves out there, and had their 4 kids, and they had very traditional male-female roles as well. So my grandfather couldn't cook at all and didn't know how to do certain house things, and he was used to doing the traditionally more male jobs around the house as well. So it was really like just losing yourself, like a big they were so dependent on each other.
And that seems to happen quite a lot, doesn't it, of couples that close, passing away quite shortly after each other. There's kind of theory whether there is a dying of a broken heart thing. There's a couple that I was friends with that happened to one of them died, and the other one died quite quickly afterwards.
It is. I've heard that as well. Yeah, various people have said a similar thing has happened when I've shared my story. Yeah.
You found the writing of the song quite therapeutic in your processing of it, and is that something that you've done in other situations when you've had a difficult experience, finding the songwriting process therapeutic?
Yeah, always. It's songwriting is absolutely my way of sort of understanding my own experiences and understanding the world. It makes me delve into whatever it is, like my grandfather's grief, for instance, to really, look at it very closely and process it, and then almost separate myself from it afterwards in a good way, in that, Americans use the word closure, but it gives you a sense of closure, and then I'm able to sort of move on emotionally in some ways, although I do perform the songs and they always bring it back, bring whatever, not always. After a long time of performing songs, you sort of don't necessarily have the same emotional feeling when you're expressing the music. It's not necessarily always really, really up, and so I'm losing my thread now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not really emotionally present all the time, the topic, but that is also a good way of remembering in some ways, when you're performing these songs that are written a long time ago, to just have these, it's almost like photo albums, or just having these memories sort of wrapped in a song is a way of looking back on your life and remembering things that are important to you.
I was thinking of it in terms of like, you've always got that then, so it's like you're not going to forget about that experience because you've dealt with it and you've got it in this song that kind of travels with you then.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting how songs, they stay the same, well, unless you choose to change them, but they stay the same, but your life evolves around them. And when you perform them, it can bring something new, to your life in that moment, like reveal something new to you. Yeah. Even though the song was written a long time ago.
I've got like a little kind of theory that songs are like infinitely deep. In that I was thinking about why I'd happily pay money over and over again to hear someone sing the same song. And why you're like, you think of some of the, like with a film, like sometimes you see a film multiple times, but you don't watch it as many times as you would listen to a song. And the song, but why, like sometimes, especially seeing it performed live, there's something then about a great performance where the song feels completely new.
I guess it's like seeing more of the iceberg.
As
maybe you
so.
Say.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And like you say, that I think that's what's really great songs are. As you change, the song reveals more of itself to you, reveals more of the iceberg, I guess, as you like there was loads of it that you just couldn't see to begin with, and you have certain experiences in your life or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, maybe that's what this song was talking about.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Just sort of holds a mirror up in lots of ways.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking as well, when you're talking about the process of writing that song and what we were talking about with the process of doing the research and things, how it's a similar thing, but with ones like this, it's like the personal experience is throwing all the information at you rather than you've gone looking for it. So like you have, especially when it's a difficult experience, it's like, a lot of information comes at you, and then you've got to then find out how to deal with that, where it's the same process as, like you said, with that one of, I want to write a song about this, I'm going to research and get all this information. It
is. It's very similar. And so if I'm writing a song that comes from my own life experiences, and if as in the case of my grandfather's story, it's quite traumatic, then I'm writing as the information, as the emotions are there, and that's my way of comforting myself in the moment, is just writing, and that can be sort of stream of consciousness, or just, I don't know, it somehow turning that grief into creativity. It gives it a home in a way, and makes it, for me, easier to understand and to process. So like you say, it is just this outpouring of, or it's this input of information, and then you're outpouring it into writing. And like you said, it does not just the song magically appears, it's more that research, or it's just coming at me, and then I'm writing it down, and then later I look back on everything that I've written and turn it into a song.
It's such a fascinating process, isn't it?
It is.
I always think with things like that as well, it's like it's putting pain to work in a way. I like when you're struggling with something, but you're putting that feeling to work rather than just sitting with it, and then you're creating something which can help other people with a similar situation.
Yeah.
So it's a very charitable way of dealing with difficulty.
Yeah, and it's amazing, when you send your songs out into the world, releasing an album or performing live, and what comes back from the people who receive them. I feel like for people who don't necessarily have a creative output, then they really hold on to your songs as something, as a way of them releasing whatever trauma or pain or joy, or that's their sort of creative output in a way, is listening and feeling a response to what you've done.
Yeah, and it's that connection is one of the things that I always really feel with it, is like when you hear a song that you feel like you could have written, or like that's what you would like to have said if you had if you'd done that process, if you had to put it into those words.
Yeah, and it can just really hit home, and you'd be like, oh, that's it, that's what I feel. And then you feel recognized in a way, and it's like, oh, somebody else has gone through that, or somebody, I can relate to that, and I feel less alone in whatever thoughts or feelings.
Yeah, and it's understandable why people get so connected to the favorite artists, and
absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, thanks a lot for your time, Emily. It's been really nice to talk to you.
Oh, lovely to talk to you, Ben. And hello to the listeners out there.
Yeah, and I recommend everyone checking out Emily's new album, A Dark Commemoration of Words. It'll be available all over the place. Presumably people can get it, order it online and things like that.
Yeah, it's in all the usual places, even in actual record stores.
Oh, even better. An excuse to go outside.
Yeah.
Have you got anything else coming up that you want to go mention to when you are doing any of the live streams? Everyone was doing live streams at the start of the lockdown, but it's kind of faded off a bit now.
Faded off a little. I'm working towards a really big live stream in a film studio, probably late October. But yeah, if people want to keep in touch, then I've got a mailing list on my website, which is emilybarker.com, and you can sign up to the mailing list there and receive an email every now and again.
Brilliant. Yeah, I recommend people to do that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, Thanks a lot for your time, Emily. And
thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.